Hey, welcome back to another tutorial for the batch program. In this one, we're going to be going through one of the experimental functions, the create spreadsheet function. This one was initially requested to have a method of taking individual components from an assembly and pulling um, details from them, categorizing them into a spreadsheet for like a purchasing department. So in this case, we've got a different model here with a bunch of boards and stuff that you'd have, say, for example, if I wanted to see how many board feet I'd need to create whatever structure this is, I can now do that. But we're going to need a little bit of setup in our case. So if you go to the settings under experimental functions and see the spreadsheet option, uh, these are the settings we have for different parts. So in this case, we're dealing with 2x4s and such. So we'll use the saw cut abbreviation. So all those parts that are going to be saw cut will have SC, and that SC is going to be in the individual of the model in the category. So it's going to be an SC category, so the program knows that it's a saw cut part. And it takes the length extrusion and uses that as the overall length, LC, laser or plasma, and those will take the square footage, phantom part, and so on. Some of these, like a purchase part or phantom part, they can be set in the BOM structure, but things like laser cut and torch cut cannot be. So that's why we have those here. Once that is done, all we need to do is select our assembly and create our spreadsheet. So with that, open up our spreadsheet. Now what this does is you can see the categories here, a saw cut profile, just like we had before, and it calculates all the feet we need. The nice thing about this is, say we have 340 feet, but well, I'm going to be ordering not one piece, so I'll say I'll get them in 10 footers, and it tells me here that some of these parts are more than 10 feet, so I'm going to need more than a 10-foot length. I want to include everything. So I'll say, well, 16 feet is a decent size. I'll need 28 of them, and then say 10 of those, and say 20 feet of these, and 10 feet of those. Oh, 16. Try again. So that way we have a length or a number that we'll need to grab. Once those have been set up, we can export this to our quote, and it'll create a cut list for us to run with. So we'll export that. This will create a separate spreadsheet that I've been fiddling with. Once again, this is experimental for that reason. I'll save it in the location that you've got the same of the assembly, and maybe I'll deal with that later. But so in this case, we have our saw cut parts. You can see the parts listed here, but in our cut list now we've got the material and stock and that kind of thing set up, and we have our length and the cut list. So in this case, we have one piece of 1.5 by 3.5, so 2x4, and it's going to be cutting these parts out of it. And you have the length of each individual pieces, so that you can give this to a guy on the floor who can cut these parts out of these stock pieces, knowing that he's going to have enough. He's not going to overrun himself. Otherwise, you can go to the individual pieces and see these are every single piece we've got to cut with its length and its part number, so that we can confirm what sizes. But this one's really handy for a guy who's just got a sheet and a buzz saw, so that they don't need to go out and calculate and measure. I find it really speeds up the process, as well as it minimizes a lot of waste. Other options, there weren't any in this particular model, but if you had a sheet metal part, it would throw it into this area and have your square footage. Now, it's not going to nest your parts and figure out how much you need if you're going to send it off to be laser cut, but it'll tell you just a general square footage of how much you need to give your estimators a good base. Purchase parts, so your nuts and bolts and things from Content Center will show up here. Vendors, that's again an iProperty you can pull off of. This may have not have been the greatest example to use, but I'm sure you can figure that all out. Anything that's not found in those categories, it just throws in here. In this case, because I did a top-down assembly, I've got a master part that everything in this model is derived from. So that's what it did here. So that's really a nothing part, but it included it anyway because the program isn't that smart. But especially for saw cut stuff, I find that really handy. Hopefully you will too. Well, let's see if we can open up that other other sheet that it created. There we go. So when I exported that saw cut parts, it created this spreadsheet, which is kind of the same thing. And I'd probably give this to the quoting department, and they can fill in their values of their suppliers, numbers, and that sort of thing. And it does a little bit of a total. I whipped this up fairly quick, so this isn't anything to be writing home about. In this case, the same quote sheet, it had a bunch of other stuff, and you can fill around with this if you want, where you can add some stock manually if it wasn't included. And here you can choose from stock, and it runs the same thing, as rather than pulling this from your models, it's pulling it from a database inside the spreadsheet, and it it creates the same kind of thing. Instead of, like I say, instead of grabbing it from your model, this now becomes kind of its own category. And when we export those, you'll have the same option to create a cut list in the export. So we're back here now. We have the length that we created, have our stock length, export quote. This was meant to be kind of a standalone thing that the sales department can use, and this first page would simply integrate with that. So feel free to fiddle around with that. Tell me what you like, what you don't like. I haven't used it a whole lot, but that's why it's in the experimental functions. Let me know your thoughts. Always happy to get feedback, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.